Okay, so this is an opening statement and transition piece that we like. We emphasize a lot on most of the scripts we have. It's not really critical that you memorize this script, but it's important that you have a value statement that works for you. So this is a little longer than probably what most people use, but most people will take one piece or parts of this to work for them. So Sherry, I'm very excited to show you the personal wishes organizer that I promised when we spoke on the phone. So we're acknowledging, right, the PWO. The planning guides are the first step in making decisions for yourself so that your family will know what your final arrangements are, removing the heavy emotional and financial burden from them. Families who have used the books and filled them out have told us that they're one of the most important and helpful books they've ever received. That statement has to really be true. Don't rush through that sentence. So I'm going to say that again. Sherry, families who have used these books and filled them out have told us that they are one of the most important and helpful books they could have ever received. The books cost us about $3 to print, but when they're filled out, they are priceless. Take a breath, take a minute so they understand. It's, again, we talked a couple weeks ago about communication. Only 7% is the words, but how much of that is your body language, but then your tone. So when they are filled out, they're priceless. So do you feel like now Sherry probably is going to be listening, right? A little bit more than when we were in the chit chat warm up stage. Now I'm going to be holding
Karen,
my, yep, go ahead.
I'm just going to add something to that, just because these are just where she's going with some of this, but sometimes what's really good at the end of if you're using an opening statement, and maybe you can write one that's very similar to this that you really like and just know it well. But this might be a really good time to ask a question after making an opening statement like this, but just simply saying, how might a book like this help your family at the time of your passing?
Yep.
Right? So then we just close our mouths and we let the family talk. These are just little things that we can do instead of doing all the talking, asking a really powerful open-ended question. So how might a book like this help your family at the time of your death? And then you just don't talk for just a minute and let them talk about how, having these things written down are going to make it easy. They're going to have the information that they need. And I mean, you haven't even started going through the book yet. There's all kinds of things you can do throughout the presentation, little questions that you can add as you make these statements to kind of get them involved in the conversation. So just kind of keep that in mind as you're making statements, to follow those up with good, open-ended, powerful questions. Sorry, Erin, go ahead.
Yeah, no, thank you. Absolutely. I tend to get uncomfortable if I have more than 4 or 5 sentences without asking them a question. I do it just in my normal conversation. I think I've just learned it throughout my time, but it's important, like Wes said, to keep them engaged. Again, it's not so important that the question is perfect. It's just that you are asking them what's important to them. So that's a really great point. If I say, Sherry, families who have used these books and filled them out have told us they are one of the most important and helpful books they could have ever received. How do you think this book would benefit your family, Sherry, when they come into the funeral home on that difficult day?
Well, it probably has information that they're going to need at the time, and they're not going to be trying to figure it out on their own.
Yeah, great. So then she's also, thank you, Sherry. And that's probably a pretty fair, honest answer that we'd hear from people. She's also now told me what problem she hopes to have helped or answered at the time of her death. So she's going to give you some clues about what's important to her. So yeah, that's great. So when we get done going through these books, you will see the incredible personal value they are to you and your family. Most families do then ask me how they can get extra copies for friends and family members. I promise to take a few minutes before we're done here today to give you an opportunity to order additional copies for your loved ones. Sound fair, Sherry?
Sure. Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks.
And I know Sherry's good at getting referrals as well. So obviously what we're doing there is planting the seed. We aren't stopping the presentation. We're not now writing down names, but back to that social proof. Probably when we're done here today, Sherry, you're going to want to know how you can get extra books for friends or family members. And I promise I'll make sure to take a few minutes to get those ordered for you. Just very assumptively planting that seed at the beginning. Okay, so we've now kind of gone from warm up chit chat. You guys are all comfortable with that. Kind of, how are you? Talk to me about your family. I've now built the value of the book. If if you don't love this paragraph or this statement, that's fine. But then talk with us and let's make sure you have a value statement transition piece that gets you into the book where the goal is that they now stop, the tone of the conversation changes a little bit, and they are now interested in the next thing that you're going to be showing them. We've sat in with people who, okay, Sherry, how many kids do you have? Wonderful. You're from Chicago. Sounds really interesting. Okay, so here's the book. This is a personal wishes organizer. There's no value built. They're not listening. So it's just very important to have a value statement before you start. So we're still holding the book. Really at no time during the presentation do we ever want to just hand the book over, because what will they do with it while we're trying to talk to them? Anyone? Has anyone
They'll take it and start looking through it.
Yeah, like it's a menu.
You won't pay attention. Yeah.
Yeah, you might as well start reading off your social security number because they're not listening to you, because they're looking at the book, right? So we don't want to ever just hand the book to them. We want to have control of it the whole time. There's a couple pages you want to maybe learn upside down. I know that sounds funny, but you're going to be presenting this way, right? So, so Sherry, just before I get started, so this is where we have the 4 most important questions. There are, of course, dozens and dozens of open-ended emotional questions. Wes sent out a really great, ideal 10 powerful questions that you can kind of use and fill in as needed. But we're going to go through the 4 questions here. So just before we go through the books, Sherry, I just have a few quick questions. Is that okay?
Sure.
Great. So have you ever taken the time to kind of just discuss with anyone, your family or friends, what you would want for your own arrangements if you died unexpectedly?
Yes. I'm going to be cremated because nobody would ever do my makeup properly for an open casket viewing.
Okay, good. Well, that's as good a reason as any. So it sounds like you have put some thought into it. Have you ever talked with anyone about that?
Yes, I've talked to my sons about it.
Okay, great. So I always have the rule of 3s with these questions. If you buzz through them too fast, it kind of just feels like you're shotgunning questions, like you're running through a checklist. So you don't ever want it to feel like a checklist. You want it to feel engaged. So I asked her if she's ever thought about it. So a follow-up question, have you ever talked to anyone? Yes, I've talked to my sons. What would be a natural next question? Okay, how many kids do you have, Sherry?
2.
Okay, and was that recently that you talked to them or some time ago?
Probably within the last few years.
Okay, great. Yeah, good. No right or wrong, just curious. So doesn't matter what follow-up questions, but I've heard people, for example, say, oh yeah, are you a veteran? Yes, I served in World War II. Okay, great. Have you thought about what kind of casket you want? Right now, it sounds like we don't care. We're just, obviously, you want to ask follow-up, engaging questions. So great. First question, just reviewing this. First question is just, have you ever talked about it? If it's a couple, have the 2 of you ever talked about what you would want for arrangements if you died unexpectedly? No right or wrong answer. That's the nice thing about these questions. It can't go badly. We're just trying to get them to talk to us about where they are. Second question. So Sherry, can you tell me, have you ever had to make funeral arrangements for a loved one before?
Yes, I had to take care of my mom and my dad's.
Okay. Now, a lot of times, and Sherry can probably attest to this, or all of you, they'll go into this on their own. If they don't, if it's just a short answer, it's very important, just from a place of empathy, to ask follow-up questions to that. And if you don't care, then probably you're in the wrong job. So we have to ask from a place of compassion and concern. Again, there's no right or wrong answer. So Sherry, I'm sorry to hear it. Sounds like you've lost both of your parents. Would you feel comfortable just sharing with me a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, it's they were sort of kind of pre-planned a little bit, but even when it happens, you're never prepared for it. I mean, you think you're strong and you've got everything together, but when it actually happens, it's a pretty rough time. It really is. And that's why I decided to meet with you, because I just don't want to do that to my sons, because my sons are not, one's pretty organized, but the other one's not. And I just don't want to do that to them.
Okay. So did they pass away close together, or Did one live?
No, and my parents were divorced since I was 6 years old, so I just got the responsibility of taking care of both of them.
Okay.
So,
So it sounds like when you say they were sort of planned, maybe they had started to have conversations, but never totally completed everything. Is that fair?
yeah, my dad he had purchased plots in Panama City, Florida, was paying on funeral plans, but never got through them. And so, I just kind of took over and switched it to a cremation because they never would have paid it off if it was a traditional funeral.
Okay.
And my mom, same thing, bought cemetery plots, was going to do a traditional funeral. And then, things happened. And so we switched it to a cremation.
Wow. So you had that extra dynamic of them being divorced. And so your role was a little different there than maybe it would have been.
Yeah. And I still have my stepmom I'm responsible for. So I
Okay.
get to go through it again.
Yeah. Is that true for you? That sounds like it's all true, Sherry.
It's completely all true. I can't make this stuff up.
You're good. That would have been. So I'm going to ask a follow-up question. Then you said you want to do this, and I'm happy to hear this. It sounds like you have a lot of love for your sons, getting this taken care of in advance, which we'll have all done today. Being assumptive, right? But which piece of it do you think was the hardest the reason you're wanting to have this done for your kids?
Just having to make those last minute decisions. And it was harder for my mom because I was closer to my mom. My dad was my father, but not really. So it's just the pieces of knowing that they're only going to have to make a phone call or two and not having to make any decisions whatsoever. I don't want them to have to be burdened with that. You think you're going to be okay, but you really are not okay.
Right. So you want them to be fully prepared so that they can focus just on grieving in a healthy way when that time comes, which we don't know when that will be.
Yeah.
Great.
And they don't live local. I mean, they wouldn't have one's up in Park City, but with the other one still back in Chicago area, they wouldn't know where to start even. So I can't do that to them. I simply cannot leave that burden to them to go, nobody looks in Yellow Pages anymore, but to try to Google what to do. And that's just unfair.
So, okay, everyone unmute yourself. I'm going to do thank you, Sherry, a little contest. I'll give $5 to the first person that can tell me one of two objections we've just handled that we are not going to hear at the end.
I have to think about it and talk to my family.
Good. Okay, good. That's one. There's actually three I can think of right off the top of my head. Good job, Sherry. You got an extra $5 coming your way. What's one more?
I don't want to deal with this right now.
Okay, good. Okay, what would go on? What's something specific that we hear at the end that maybe that would eliminate?
That they need some time to think about it.
Right, we're getting there. But what is the biggest, other than we need to think about it? If they don't move forward today, they
Can't afford it.
money. Right. Who said that?
Me,
Cindy. Okay.
me.
Good job. You'll get $5 too. We just made it
Okay.
about nothing to do with the money. So this covers, my insurance is going to handle it. My traditional life insurance is going to handle it. Does that make sense based on what Sherry just said? No. I'm going to talk to my kids first. Absolutely not, because now we know the reason she's doing it is for that. Well, you know what? I just need to kind of see if I can afford this. I want to see if this makes sense financially. No, that's not going to work. So now any of the money objections, we just kicked right out. And now it's easy at the end because it's not about the money. So if she says, well, I was talking to someone yesterday. They said, well, I think I'm just gonna let my life insurance handle this. If you paint the picture at the beginning as to why they're here in the first place, she told me all of it. I didn't tell her why I think this is important. She has told me in her own words, which are Sherry's that's her story. That's true for her, That's why she wants to pre-plan. Now, do we still have to make it work financially? Do we still have to make it work within her budget? Sure. But that's a way easier conversation than I'm going to talk to my financial advisor and see if I can get a better rate of return on my money. We've killed that one too. So there's a few. So does that make sense to everyone? Okay. So thanks, Sherry. Sorry, a little off track. So you made arrangements for your parents, and we had kind of confirmed that they had talked about it but hadn't pre-planned, and now we know why Sherry wants to pre-plan. So Sherry, if you had passed away yesterday, who would be in meeting with our funeral director today?
I suppose my sons. would
Okay,
have
so
to be
one's
there.
here in Utah and then one's out of state. Do you think they'd both be here or just the one that's in Utah?
The one that's out of state is the executor, so he would have to come in town.
Kind of fly in. Okay. And do they get along pretty well?
Sort of, kind of, maybe.
Okay. Okay. Yep, that's usually the answer, right? That also now kicks out, I'm going to talk to my kids because they can't agree on anything. So you know what, Sherry, no need to be embarrassed about that. We hear that more often than not. So another reason that we're getting this done today, right? So they don't have to worry about it.
Right.
So Sherry, do you have an idea, if you just had to guess, no right or wrong, but how much a funeral would cost if you with everything if you passed away tomorrow?
Well, I get flyers in the mail all the time that cremation's only $7.95.
Okay.
So I think it's about $800.
Okay. And tell me kind of what you're envisioning for your cremation and gathering, everything kind of from start to finish.
Well, like I said, I mean, nobody's ever going to view me dead because I don't want anybody walking by someplace and saying she looks so good. And I'm thinking, no, I'm dead. I don't look good. And nobody's doing the makeup or hair right. So that ain't happening. And so with my mom, we just had the cremation and then we had a memorial service about 3 weeks later.
Okay.
Because one thing I liked about that is it's not so raw.
Mm-hmm.
And you can actually celebrate that person's life rather than at the time of need when all you can do is blubber.
Yep. Great. So something I like to just tell all the families I meet with, Sherry, is I feel I'm huge on just being transparent. So I always start with the biggest piece. So let's say instead of cremation, you were going to have a traditional burial, but we know that's not happening because your makeup's fabulous and no one can recreate that. An average funeral, though, with burial in the state of Utah today, which is crazy, but it's about $12,000 to $16,000. Obviously that goes up each year. So a lot of families then, because like you, are opting for cremation. A full cremation with some sort of gathering, kind of like you're talking about, maybe some time for private visitation, generally is about half of that, sometimes more or less. And I'm going to go through all those options for you and find something that works for your budget. Sound good?
Yeah,
great.
Good.
I give that same exact answer for price framing with every single family. I don't care if she says it's $12 or $12,000 or $30,000. I give the same. So whatever it is in your state, give the full traditional average. Cremation generally is about half of that. And then it's more or less based on your own personal needs. And we'll find something that works for your budget. But you do not want them to be surprised by the cost at the end. If they're going to be surprised by the cost, let's do it now while we're just in this exploratory phase, not when I'm also asking Sherry for money. Make sense to everyone? Any questions on that? Okay. So that's the third question, right? So if you had passed away yesterday, who'd be in meeting with us, really paint that picture. She kind of already did that with the question before. So I'm not going into as much detail as I normally would, but make sure we have a really good idea of what that day looks like and what's important to her. So then the next question, I'm going to minimize this and bring back my PWO, is the fourth question is the umbrella. So, all right, Sherry, so I'm holding the book. Thanks for sharing all of that with me. I know it's not pleasant things to discuss, but hopefully you're feeling a little bit better having the conversation. So this first page, as I kind of open the book, so I'm showing this to Sherry, is what we call our umbrella of protection. Sherry, there's a lot of different, and you guys have scripts for this, so I'm just ad-libbing here, but find something that's comfortable for you. But there's a lot of things in our lives that we have under this umbrella of protection. We have homeowners insurance, medical insurance, automobile insurance, all frankly for things that we hope we'll never use, right? The one thing now that more families are adding under that umbrella is for their final arrangements. So just so I know what to focus on during our visit here today, Sherry, could you just share with me of these items listed? So I'm pointing in real life, but you guys can read them here. Of these items listed, kind of what stands out to you, the one or two top reasons that you feel like pre-planning and getting this done today is a good idea?
I would say to take the burden off of loved ones and put my house in order. I'm always very organized, and I do better in organization than not organization.
Great. I can sense that from you. You're a planner. You like things done the way you want it done. Back to the makeup, right? You have your way and no one else is going to do it. I love it. And Sherry, I'm glad you said that about taking the burden off loved ones. Quite frankly, almost everyone we meet with says that. And, you know, there are some other benefits, financial and things, but frankly, just like you said, the real benefit is just removing that heavy emotional burden from them on, frankly, what will likely be one of the hardest days of their life. So I appreciate you sharing that with me. So now we're transitioning into the book. Okay, so we have those 4 questions. I really could argue that those are the most important, but as long as you have emotional questions that are getting them to say in their words why they want to pre-plan, get it away from the money. So that at the end, we're just figuring out what works for their budget, right? So I'm not going to go through the book, but of course, you know, there's this message to my loved ones and then the book itself. So now we're going to skip down. So we're going through this book. Everyone, I hope, is familiar with this, right? Everyone's used this many times. Okay. And Armand, I won't have him do it on this call, but if you ever want to see a great way to do this message to my loved ones page, give Armand a call. He does it beautifully. So, okay. So I'm going to bring up then this pie chart. So we all know about the easy way, hard way page, right? And I'm sure everyone does it exactly this way every time. Everyone's nodding. I'll tell you guys a secret, since hopefully West isn't listening. I skipped this page for like a year, and I don't like to think of how much money it probably cost me, but I hated it. It made me so uncomfortable. I didn't understand the reason for it, and I got a lot of, we need to think about it. It's because of it. So this easy way, hard way page is really the most uncomfortable part of the whole presentation, but it's because you're bringing out the objections here. So if you skip this page, you're just now delaying all of those difficult objections for when you're also asking them for money, which is the last place you want to get those objections. So again, better to bring them out while we're still just having a conversation. So Sherry, in reality, there are only 2 ways that we can handle the loss of a loved one. It can be done when it's out of a matter of necessity, as unfortunately you have seen firsthand. There tends to be a fair amount of emotional overspending. We feel quite alone, stressed out, confused. And that's if everyone does get along. So, you know, you've got a lot of dynamics there you've shared with me today. Or we can make these decisions when it's a matter of choice. And we have the comfort of us making these decisions together. So if it's a single person, I still say that. Together, not alone. You're together with me now. We have the ability to reason, have that peace of mind that we've planned, but also know that we've protected our loved ones. Sherry, based on what you've shared with me today, it sounds like you'd rather get this done now rather than leave it to your sons to be done the hard way. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, then if it's okay with you. So now this is where on the phone, how long does this take? The planning guide takes 15 to 20 minutes. That is true. We then ask for permission to proceed. No one ever says no, but that's how, if you ever worry about that, yes, a full presentation might take an hour or 2, but we're asking for permission. So Sherry, if it's okay with you, I'd like to show you this blue pie chart. If you're like me, I'm a visual person. This is a visual representation of all the decisions that will need to be made when the time comes. So I'm going to start here at the bottom. Sound good with our cemetery? Great.
Sure.
So, okay, so we're not going through the pie chart. We can go through that individually if you guys have questions. But that's a transition from the easy way, hard way page. You'll notice the key phrase Based on what you've shared with me, it sounds like you'd rather get these decisions done in advance rather than wait till the time comes. Is that correct? Is that fair? Sound good? Any version of that? We are waiting for confirmation and permission to proceed. It's not aggressive, it's not rude, but if there is an objection, well, I'm not sure, I might want my insurance to cover it. You know what? We'll talk about that. Is there anything else you have a question about? Or, well, I don't know if I can afford it. Oh, totally get that. That's what we're going to go through next, and we'll see what works for your budget. Okay, so we want to get any objections out before we move on to this, because people do want to know what their funeral is going to cost. Okay.
Yeah, Aaron, I'm just going to say there's a lot of people that ask me questions of how do I switch from the emotional side to the money side? If you skip that page, it's hard.
Yeah.
But if you use that page and use it as a tool to be able to make that transition, it is way smooth. I promise on that situation, and hit those objections before you get to it, like she says. But if you don't use it, it's going to be harder.
That's
Guaranteed.
exactly right. If you're getting a lot of people saying they need to think about it, I'd be willing to bet $1 that you probably are either skipping that page or you're going through it really fast and you're not waiting for that confirmation from them. Again, it's uncomfortable, but better that it's uncomfortable there than when you're at the very end asking for the money. So it took me a long time to get that. So I understand where you're coming from. If you need help on that page, trust me, I get it. Call me. I'll be happy to go through that with you. But Travis is right. It's incredibly important. Okay, so I'm going to bring up the cost estimate. So everyone's probably familiar with this. This is the cost estimate sheet. Now, as you're filling out the blue pie chart, you want to write, you can make notes on the pie chart, but you want to write all of their decisions clearly with the cost directly on the cost estimate, so that you're not writing on the pie chart and then writing on the estimate. Okay, so you have them side by side. You've got the general price list, the pie chart, and then you're filling out their decisions. So you get to the bottom, and then we have the total for everything. So Sherry, for everything we've discussed today, which also includes our away from home membership, which brings you back home safely if you were to pass away out of the area at any time, and that's a membership one time of $449. So for everything we've discussed today, the total is $47.92. Sherry, this is a place where most families ask about their options to pay for this. So legally, a funeral home cannot hold your money until the day of passing, so your money is held safely in an insurance vehicle. What's nice about that is it allows you to either pay in full or make payments over time, whichever's most comfortable for you. So Sherry, I'm going to just give you your payment options and you tell me what works best. How old are you today? 39. Great. Let me start filling out. Okay. I got you, Sherry. Okay. So
Okay.
I'm not going to fill this out, but you guys we have the closing script. If anyone has questions about that, in fact, we have that here. This is the closing process. If this is in your training manual, so if you don't have a closing script memorized, do that first thing when we hang up today. You've got to feel super duper duper comfortable with your closing script. So Sherry, this is where most families ask about their options to pay for this. Legally, the funeral home can't hold it. It's held through an insurance. I mean, it's kind of when you bullet point it, it feels a lot easier, but make sure you have that down. So we're now filling out the cost estimate. Who can tell me what are the most helpful pieces of paper to have right next behind the cost estimate to have ready to go once she's given you kind of a confirmation of which payment's most comfortable?
Grandchild thing that they can fill out.
Yes, grandchild thing that they can fill out. Good job, Sherry. That's exactly it. So I've got it here. So this is the grandchild rider. I never bring this up with families until this point because so if anyone's familiar with the law of reciprocity, the Hare Krishnas used to be in the airport and they'd hand out flowers and they were beautiful.
You don't remember that. You're not old enough.
Well, to be fair, I don't remember about it. I just have read about it in sales books. So, but I can imagine it in my mind. So they'd have flowers, but most people didn't take the flowers, even though it was a free flower. And who doesn't want a flower? Why do you think they wouldn't take the flowers?
Because you're connected to them by that time.
Right. They're going to expect something from you. Now, that something might just be time to listen to their spiel, but you don't want to feel beholden to have to listen to them. So by giving them something, people then, it's just a natural law of reciprocity. You are now giving them something of value with the child grandchild rider. So I'm going to go back to the cost estimate. Let me pull this up. Sorry, toggling here. So we have, here it is. So Sherry, we'll just assume I'll give you the options. You tell me one that works. So we can set it up over 3 years will be $559 a month. 5 years will be $421 a month, or 7 years will be $292 a month. Which is most comfortable for you?
Am I paying interest on that?
Oh, great question. Nope, it's actually held through an insurance vehicle, which is based on age and a few other factors. Let's actually just figure what that is now. So I have a whole packet here of my closing tools. So you want to have 3 or 4 ready. So we're actually going to skip ahead. I would now go straight to the application so that I can tell you that exactly, Sherry. I'm just going to ask you some health questions. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay, so I see that you're not hospitalized or bedridden. Have you ever been diagnosed? And we go through all the health questions, okay? And then have you been, in the past 5 years, have you been treated for any of these? And we read all of that. Okay, great. She says no, no. And what is your birth date, Sherry? And then I'm going to fill in the birth date. So we can set it up. Before I answer that question, which payment option did you say was most comfortable?
Probably the 3-year.
Okay, so that was $592 a month. I'm going to fill that out here. So this is held through Homesteaders Life. It's an insurance policy. The nice thing about this is as you're making payments, if you pass away, the entire rest of your funeral is forgiven and paid off. Because you answered no to the health questions, it's covered right away. So you kind of at this point just start explaining how this works. The nice thing is if you don't want to pay any cost of insurance, you have 6 months to just pay it off. 12 months, it's a very low fee. And then beyond that, you will be paying a cost of insurance. They'll send you the policy. And when you get that, just call me. I'll go back through that with you. Now, is this your best mailing address as well?
Yes.
Okay, great. So now let's go back. So that's how I would handle that. That's exactly how, don't make it a bigger deal than it needs to be. I've seen people literally turn red and like breathe heavy when people ask about how much is the interest or how much is the insurance. I probably was one of those people early on, so no judgment. But be aware if is your response negative, are you kind of panicking? So if she says, how much is the interest? Great question. Let's get this filled out and I'll tell you. And you'll get the policy. It'll explain all that to you. We'll get back together. The goal is just to start filling out the paperwork. Charlie knows all this from his past career, right, Charlie? We've been there. We came from similar worlds. So, okay, Sherry, so 3, 5, 7, which is most comfortable for you? We're going to do another one.
3 years.
Okay, great. 592. Let me also, Sherry, you said you have how many grandkids? 3?
None.
None. Well, this is awkward. Okay. Let's pretend.
0. They're not married.
For the sake of the exercise, we'll pretend that you had told me that you.
Okay, I have 27 because I live in Utah.
Oh, wow, that's way the other direction. Okay. All right. Well, 27. Pick the 12 that are most accident prone, right? Okay. So wonderful. You said you have 3 grandkids. This is a really nice gift that's given to you by Homesteaders that we include with all of our policies. This covers up to $4,200, whatever her contract is. If, heaven forbid, any of your grandchildren were to pass away, they would receive $4,200 towards their services paid in the form of cash, and it doesn't cost you any extra. I just need the first and last name of your grandkids. And I just start writing. Okay, great. Tyler Smith, whatever it is, and you just start filling it out. Then the top, you'll notice, are similar questions for the top of the enrollment form. Now you've got that process started. So the grandchild writer is a great transition tool. Obviously, the enrollment form, I would have 3 or 4 questions kind of ready to go on this as a kind of a transition piece. One of them is, what is your birth date? A second is the health questions. The third is this your mailing address? And then you kind of just have that ready to go. So if she asks an objection, well, like she did with the interest. Yep, great question. Let's get this filled out. And then what's your birth date? Great question. Yep, answer, reply. And is this your mailing address? So you want to have those tools ready. Another great tool is the vital statistics sheet. I know some of you use this during the presentation or at the beginning. That's fine. Don't change how you're doing that. But if you have not at this point filled this out, I always liked it because it gave them something to do while I was doing my paperwork. But kind of see how it's comfortable for you. If there's any part of this that was left undone, you could also have them complete filling it out. And of course, the last one is the referral form that we discussed at the beginning. So kind of bringing it back full circle. So Sherry, just while I fill this out, I had mentioned earlier, most families ask about how they can get additional copies of the Personal Wishes Organizer for their own use. I'm just going to give you this page. You said you have a few friends at your church that probably could use the book. Just fill out their name and phone number. If you want to put address, fine. If not, you can just enter their phone number and then kind of how you know them. And then I'm going to get this form filled out. And again, remind me, did we decide on the pink urn or the blue marble?
It would have to be purple.
That's right. I knew it was the purple one. Yep. It was a beautiful, extravagant purple urn. So
Exactly.
notice we always have a transition statement or question. We never just leave it hanging in the ethosphere because otherwise it feels awkward and we don't know what to say. So here's the form. Perfect. Okay. And we've got the memorial service. We've got everything done. Let's, move it right along. Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing so we can see each other. Thoughts or questions about, there's a lot of information all at once, but any thoughts or questions from anyone?
One quick question, Ms. Aaron.
Yeah.
Did you mention it was $4,200 on the grandchild and great grandchild? I thought it was $5,000.
Great question. It's up to the amount of their policy, or it's the amount of their policy up to 5,000. So if their policy is less than 5,000, then it would be that. If their policy was 7,800, it would be 5,000.
Okay.
So where hers,
Thank
where
you.
I'd use the example of 4,200, then it would just be equal to her face amount.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, good question. Kathy, did
Just
you?
to add to that, that's a cash benefit that goes towards that family, and it's not, doesn't have to go towards a funeral or nothing, just a cash benefit.
Right. And if there's a
May I ask
couple-
another dumb question?
No, yeah, there's no dumb questions, but I'll let you know.
Okay, I just noticed that you had mentioned, okay, if you have not filled out the vital statistic, now's a good time to get them. But as I'm fresh and new and rather novice to the script, I go through them. Now, these pages are really, really important. In fact, that's why I'm here. I'm going to help you fill those out. So
Yep.
I labor a lot over those pages. How many of us wait and let our customer fill it out while we're doing the contract paperwork? I see two paths split into the woods, and I want to take the road most profitable.
Yeah, great question. That was not dumb at all. So you want to have 4 or 5 pages that you really highlight and focus on, but you do not want to be filling out the book physically with the family. They will exhaust all of their emotional energy before you ever even get to the pie chart or the real decisions about their merchandise, services, or money. So you want to highlight for them, so to speak, what pages are most important, but the vital statistics we want on record at the funeral home. So that is that like second or third page of the book. That one's great to fill out, but instead we have it in the form of, you've probably seen it. That's a cost estimate, but you just have a separate page. So how I usually do that page, I say, Bob and Mary, this, if you can see this here, this is the information that will be used by the funeral director for the death certificate. Have you ever filled out a death certificate? So on and so forth. We actually have a little bit more inclusive form that I'm going to just fill out with you right now. And you can fill that out, kind of break from the book and fill it out. Some people fill it out at the very end, whatever is most comfortable for you, but I would not fill out the whole book when you're with the family. You'll spend so much time and emotional energy, they'll be done by you. You'll leave it with them to fill out and then you can follow back up. Does that answer your question? Okay, does anyone else want to chime in about that or how they do that?
Aaron, I just have a question.
Yeah, hey Jane.
Hi. It's the first time I've heard Travis say that. I always thought that the child-grandchild rider was only to be used for funeral arrangements for the death of the child or grandchild. I didn't know it was just cash, $5,000 cash.
Yeah, I mean, it's intended to be used for that service, but homesteaders technically pays them in cash. So you don't, I mean, you just like any insurance, kind of normal insurance, but instead of it going directly to the funeral home, it goes directly to the family. But yeah, they could use it for any purpose.
Okay, so I can say it's $5,000 cash given directly to you, not to the funeral home.
Right, exactly.
Right.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. The other thing I wanted to ask you about is lately, when I've been trying to use the PWO to get people to give me referrals
Mhm.
for friends, family, whatever, I've gotten some very negative comments. Like one person said, "Are you joking me? You want me to give you the names and addresses of people to get this? I would never do that. You know, I would never. What, you're going to start sending them information?" I said, "Totally not." I said, it was just a very, you know, when I explained that it was just you said how you thought this was such a valuable tool. Others will also feel, you know, others do feel it would be a valuable tool, but a couple times really negative. Like, if you want to give me a couple, that's fine. I'll be happy to share it with my sister or give it to my friend Judy down the street or whatever. But yeah, forget it.
So the thing, a couple things here. If we ask 10 to 15 people, we're not going to get 10 to 15 people give us referrals, but we'll probably get 7 to 8. We'll probably get 1 or 2 that kind of laugh at us or roll their eyes, and that's fine. So don't let 1 or 2 people throw you off if you're kind of staying on course with that. But the other piece of it is just use the social proof. You know what, Mary? It might not work for you. Just most families I meet with end up asking if they can get books for people they know. You mentioned Judy. Why don't you just reach out to Judy and see if she's interested, and you could just give her my card and have her reach out to me if she'd like to meet.
Right. Well, that's what I ended up saying, I understand how you feel like people use information for the wrong reasons and things like that. And I can understand that. And so, you know, I'm happy to give you a card. If you'd like to give my card to them and let them contact me, you know, I'll be happy to still provide the book to them. But if they want to reach out to me, that's fine, you know.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I wouldn't even validate the negativity. I would just say, you know what, if you know anyone, great. If not, no big deal. I mean, I would
Okay.
just totally minimize it. Yeah, that's fine. If you don't, that's okay. Most people ask. Yeah, Gary.
Oh, I was just going to say, I've had some folks who they seem a little off about the idea of doing referrals, and kind of a middle ground I meet them at is I let them kind of set the tone for how they want to do that. So for some people, I mean, I have one, they've got just, you know, like pages of people that they want to refer to me. Other people, they say, you know what, here's a couple people that I know wouldn't mind me putting their name down. Let me talk to some other people who I know might be a little iffy. And then that gives you a great excuse to follow up with them. So that's the other thing, is sometimes if you give them options of like how that looks like, instead of, hey, just give me their information, then they can also like generate more leads.
That's great advice. Yeah, I think follow their lead, kind of set the tone. The key is just mentioning it somehow every time. Of course, there's better ways, but this is my philosophy on it. Just, there are people who get a lot of referrals, and if I'm honest, they're not like expert referral scripters. They just ask. Sometimes it's clunky, and sometimes they're going to roll their eyes, Jane, and you just go, you know what? Okay, if not, no big deal. Have a good day. Don't push it. Just make sure you're planting that seed with everyone, because there will be some, like Gary said, that give you.
Keep this philosophy in mind, because we're in sales. And it's the same thing in fundraising, which is something I did for years and years. Never ask, never get, but be willing to take no for an answer.
I love it. Jane, you probably didn't recognize him, but that's Lou. He's just not in his chair, so don't get thrown off because he's in the office.
I won't.
Teasing you, Lou. That is good idea. I mean,
It's the cardboard cutout, Erin.
There you go.
Don't let the negative, I mean, just like you're good at this, Jane, you know, don't let them throw you off, and don't also let it make you think you're doing something wrong. Sometimes there's just people who are negative and don't want to give you referrals.
Right now.
Yeah.
I'm still going to ask I'm still gonna ask. It's just that when this person, said this to me, I was like, seriously? I mean, it made me feel like a used car salesman, And I thought to myself, I have more class than that, and I'm asking for a good reason, But
You know
she
what
was
I would
just.
say then? I just ran out of books. You can't have any more. Sorry. Never mind. You don't get any. So there. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Sorry, I know we're a little over time. If you guys need to leave, go ahead and hop off, but I'll stay on as long as needed. Any other questions or thoughts or any piece of this that's been helpful or not helpful or whatever?
It's always a good review, I think.
Thanks.
Always good. You hear something new every time.
That's the goal. And sometimes, it's like anything. It's just repetition, but sometimes you just hear it a different way and it sticks. But yeah, that's great. Cindy, did you have something? Did I talk over you?
No.
Okay, great. Okay, anything else? Oh, first, before we hang up, everyone, round of applause to Sherry. She did a great job as my assistant volunteer today. Good job, Sherry. Yeah. All right, West, any last thoughts?
Awesome. I think that the main thing is that you just start implementing new tricks of the trade, right? And just new ways of doing things. I mean, it's surprising the number of people that actually, don't even use a presentation. So I just think that these are proven methods and they work for as long as I can remember. This is stuff that we talked about over 20 years ago when I started doing this. And again, just being comfortable, being uncomfortable, right? Get comfortable being uncomfortable, because a lot of this is out of our comfort zone. But if we use it and we force ourselves to learn it and we do these things, it's going to make a big impact. And always have the big thing in the back of your mind that I do these things because I'm helping families be prepared for the most difficult day of their life. So getting uncomfortable is part of that. If it just is to walk in the park and easy and you're having this beautiful, wonderful conversation and it never gets uncomfortable, then you're probably not doing things the right way. It's meant to be uncomfortable. It's meant for it to be uncomfortable when you say it, and it's meant to be uncomfortable when they hear it. That's the whole design behind it. So if it's not uncomfortable, you're probably not stirring things up enough for people to take action. Discomfort is what creates the opportunity to make these sales. If you don't paint a picture of how big this problem is when the time comes, then you don't have anything to give them for a solution. That's why we do what we do, is that most people don't understand the problem they have. So they're allowing you to come into their home, but you're creating a problem to help them understand just the depth of the challenges that they face when making arrangements. And then you're coming to the table with a solution. So, and that's all part of that whole process, taking them through the whole presentation to the very end, that we don't want you to have this problem. And guess what? I'm here to help you fix it, to make this so much easier for your family members. So create some discomfort. It's important.
Yep. Thanks, Wes. But hi, Melanie. Good to see your face, by the way. Just saw you pop on. Yeah, great advice. The other last thing I'll mention, Gary, congrats again on your Growth Mindset Award. One of the pieces, though, and this is consistent across the board, the people that do very well, we hear from a lot, we're in regular communication with. When I first started, I called West 3 to 72 times a day. I mean, any question I had, as soon as still the same. If I left an appointment, whether it was a sale or not, just to kind of debrief and talk through it, I learned more by doing that than I could have by being in weeks and weeks of classroom training. So call us. If you just want to talk about something, review something, ask a question. We love to hear from you guys. We're never too busy to talk with any of you. And frankly, we love it. That's what gives us energy. So thank you all. It's good to see your faces. Highlight of my week. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.